Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbart Gaming. It's been a while since I did a hardware review on the channel, and well, it's about time I fix that. Today I'll be reviewing the Beelink Ser4 mini PC. Specifically, I'll be talking about how it is for gaming and emulation, mostly with a focus on emulation. I'd planned to get this video out 2 weeks ago, and have been working on it for about 3 weeks now. There were tech gremlins, driver updates, emulators that were broken, emulators that were fixed, and basically things changed a whole lot from the point that I started to now. So, in the end, I guess it's kind of for the best that I had to wait since things are so much different. As far as the disclosures go for this video, I got this product through the Amazon Vine program, which means its value counts as income. I did not receive this product from Beelink. They aren't involved in the content of this video in any way and have no idea that I'm even making it. Alright, let's get on with it. This is the Beelink Ser4 mini PC. Its case is made of metal and it feels like a premium product compared to many of the other mini PCs that I've tried over the years. It's also a lot smaller than many other devices in this class with similar hardware. When it comes to specs, here's what we've got with this computer. It has a Ryzen 7 4800U APU with 8 cores and 16 threads. The CPU can turbo up to 4.2 GHz. It has integrated Radeon 8 graphics, 16 GB of RAM, and a 512GB NVMe drive. There's also plenty of I/O and support for up to 3 video outputs through 2 HDMI ports and 1 USB-C port. The Ser4 comes with Windows 11 pre-installed, includes an AC adapter, a mounting bracket, 1 short and 1 longer HDMI cable. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on benchmarks, but I ran Cinebench and a few others, and well, here they are as I tell you just a tiny bit more here. Now the Ryzen 7 4800U is a couple of years old now, and is a mobile processor designed for laptops. But its relatively high core count and decent integrated graphics should lead to pretty good performance for some modern-ish games and emulation. Let's find out if that's the case. Oh, one quick side note before I begin. I'm running these games and emulators with the high performance setting enabled in the BIOS. I'll have a link below that tells you how to enable that. Just be aware that if you buy a Ser4, it's set up to prefer power saving instead of performance out of the box. To kick things off, I'm going to look at just a few PC games and then we'll move over to emulation. What we've got here is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Yeah, I love this game and was happy to see that it completely ran without a hitch, and I played this game from start to finish. I've tested it on similar hardware and experienced slowdown in a few sections, particularly on some of the bosses. Now I'm happy to report that on the Ser4, I didn't experience any slowdown or frame rate drops at all. Next up we have Tomb Raider, at least the first modern reboot in the current franchise, and this one is interesting. Initially this game ran alright. I had to drop the resolution down to 1600 by 900, and even then it wouldn't run at 60 frames per second all the time, it would drop into the 40s. After the Adrenaline driver update from late July 2022, however, I've been able to bump this game up to 1080p, and I haven't seen it drop below 60 at all on here, even after playing it for a few hours. The performance increase after the driver update for this game made it seem like it was running on totally different hardware. The last game I'm going to show here on the PC gaming side of things is the original Skyrim. I figured why not, a lot of people still play it, so here it is. As you can see, it runs fine on the Ser4, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. And as I mentioned, modern-ish gaming isn't the focus of this video, I just wanted to give you a few examples of what you can expect on that front. What I really wanted to show you was how it performs with emulation. And I'm only going to show you some of the more difficult to run systems. Anything PlayStation and below will run just fine on here as you'd expect. So let's kick things off with Sega Saturn emulation. For Saturn, I'm using Beetle Saturn in RetroArch for this footage. The reason I specifically mention that is because on lower-end mini PCs utilizing Celerons and similar classes of CPUs, Beetle Saturn is way too slow to use. On the 4800U powering this device, however, Saturn emulation is totally fine. I tested a few games and all of them were full speed all the time. While N64 has generally been fine on PC for a good long while now, it can also struggle a bit on some lower-end mini PCs, so I'm including it here. I'm just using the Mupen core and RetroArch for this footage, and everything I tried here was alright, which is exactly what I expected considering the power level of this hardware. Here's just a little bit of Dreamcast emulation via Flycast through RetroArch. Now, performance is great, but there are some glitches I ran into here that I haven't experienced on other hardware. But don't worry, Dreamcast fans, you can always run things through Redream instead. Next up, let's take a look at PlayStation 2 with PCSX2. Like with Saturn games and N64 games, I didn't experience any issues with it, unless I really tried to bump the resolution up in a few of the more difficult to run games, like Shadow of the Colossus. I'll note that even on considerably more powerful machines than this one, with beefier CPUs and GPUs, that game can still have performance issues at higher resolutions. Otherwise, as you can see here, PS2 emulation is great on the Ser4. Let's take a look at GameCube games running in Dolphin. Every game I tested on here was full speed with no drops even at higher resolutions. There weren't any issues with GameCube titles at all. The Ser4 handled everything I threw at it just fine. Now, Dolphin also, of course, runs Wii games. Here's the original Xenoblade Chronicles, which I'm running here with a 60 frames per second patch enabled at 1080p. It can still drop frames from time to time, but that happens even on higher end hardware while using this patch. For the most part, its performance is excellent. And I'll show you a few other Wii games here just so you can see how it handles other games. And performance was great for every game that I tested. Here we have some PSP games running through the standalone version of PPSSPP. I'm going to show you 3 games in this video that have traditionally had problems running at full speed on lower end hardware. First, this is God of War Chains of Olympus. This is one of the hardest PSP games to run at full speed on lower end devices, but as you can see, the Ser4 handles it just fine. Next up is Wipeout Pulse. This game in particular has gotten faster in newer versions of PPSSPP, but can still struggle on weaker machines. But on the Ser4, as you can see, it's buttery smooth even at 4 times resolution. Lastly, on the PSP side of things, I've got Tomb Raider Anniversary, which on low-end hardware can become like a slideshow at times. But no problems here, thankfully, it runs just great. Next on the agenda is Citra, the 3DS emulator. And whoo boy was this a pain, and I'll tell you why. At first, Citra basically ran fine. It was a little bit stuttery here and there when I first put it on the Ser4, but it was perfectly playable right out of the box. You just would have a few little noticeable hiccups here and there, even on some simple games like Final Fantasy Theater Rhythm Curtain Call. Why the problems? Well, you see, Citra runs an OpenGL, which has been notoriously bad on AMD GPUs. This was the case for years, until, about 2 weeks ago. With the brand new drivers that just came out, Citra was the one thing that I was most excited to try out on here, and, well, games crashed immediately upon loading. In fact, this was what caused the latest delay in this video. I originally tried to get 3DS up and running on it to record games last week, but I just wasn't going to release this video without showing 3DS performance. So after trying for several days to fix it and nothing working right, 2 days before recording this footage for the video, the latest Canary update of Citra fixed the issue with new AMD drivers, and Citra runs great now. Just keep in mind you'll still get occasional stutters here and there when seeing stuff for the first time in games, but other than that, it runs just very well. Sticking with Nintendo, here's how Wii U emulation runs under Cemu. Here's some Xenoblade Chronicles X to get us started, and as you can see, it runs fine. I did try enabling a 60 frames per second patch for this one, and the Ser4 just didn't have the horsepower to deliver that kind of performance with this game at 1080p. But it did run perfectly fine at 30 frames per second, which is the speed the game runs at on real Wii U hardware anyway. Now aside from that, here's a look at a few other Wii U games so you can see just how well they perform. Alright, and I'm gonna polish things off in the emulation section here with a look at a few PS3 games running under RPCS3. I'm starting with a roguelike dungeon crawler that I really like and feel is underappreciated, the Guided Fate Paradox. I bought this game on a whim several years ago after getting super into the mystery dungeon genre, and I really liked it. As you can see here, this game runs at full speed without a hitch on RPCS3. Now, other games that are visually more complex, well, performance will depend on the game, as you can see here. Here's a glance at Fist of the North Star Ken's Rage and Ghostbusters. Basically, some PS3 games will run perfectly fine, but demanding games will not run at full speed at 720p. Also be aware that compiling shaders can take a good long while with this emulator on this hardware. One final note on emulation. I originally considered including Nintendo Switch emulation footage here, but since Nintendo has been going after channels that include any Switch emulation footage in their videos, especially small channels like mine, I thought it best to exclude that. Sorry, but it's just not worth the risk. Alright, let's sum up what we've got here. The Beelink Ser4 is a great little machine and one of the more capable mini PCs I've tried out over the last several years. When it comes to modern or modern-ish games from the last few years, it runs a lot of them pretty well. As far as emulation goes, you'll get great performance from the 32-bit generation and below, and pretty good emulation for a couple of generations beyond that. The Ryzen 7 4800U that powers this computer makes it a tiny little emulation beast, at least up until you hit the PS3 era. While this review is focused on gaming and emulation, I've still got to mention that this is a full Windows 11 PC, and you can do way more things with it than just gaming. It's great for web browsing, some productivity stuff, as a media PC, and even video editing isn't too bad on it, even though I wouldn't necessarily suggest it specifically for that purpose. The reason I bring this up is I know a lot of my viewers are probably either using modded consoles or single-board computers to do a lot of those things, and I just want to stress that the Ser4 is way better at it than those solutions. Now, what about the downsides? Surely there's a few, and yeah, there are, and they aren't deal breakers as far as I'm concerned. First, it only has one M.2 slot, which is occupied by the included NVMe drive. Also, for some reason, they decided to include the 16GB of RAM on a single RAM stick, so you're not getting dual-channel memory performance out of the box with this device. That means you should be able to get a minor performance boost by adding a second RAM stick to the computer or replacing the single 16GB stick with two 8GB sticks. Now, I didn't have extra memory to test that at the moment, but there's plenty of videos showing comparative benchmarks and the difference that you can expect there, which is noticeable. Keep in mind that this uses laptop RAM, not desktop RAM. Finally, let's talk price. Depending on where you shop, pricing for the Ser4 is all over the place, and you've really got to be careful to make sure you're getting the right model. In other words, if you're web searching to find a better price on this thing, there are lots of different models in the Beelink Ser line, and you might end up getting linked to older ones in search results. So if you're interested in this one in particular that I'm reviewing today, make sure that you're looking for a Ser4 4800U. Generally, the price is around $400 to $450 in most places for this model. At that price, it's pretty easy to recommend it if you want a compact but relatively powerful mini PC that you just want pre-assembled and ready to go. On the other hand, I've seen it as high as $650 at Amazon, and at that price, it's just not worth it. You could get a more powerful desktop for a lot less. In my opinion, it stops being a good buy probably just above $450 before taxes. In the end, the Beelink Ser4 is one of the best mini PCs I've ever used in its price range. I've had several Beelink devices over the years, and reliability has never been an issue with any of them. My review score has to partially be based on price, so if you can get one for $450 or less, I'd give it a solid 5 out of 5. But I would say to drop the score by a point for each additional $50 above that price. Meaning at $450 to $499, I'd drop my score to a 4, $500 to $549, it would be a 3, etc. But really, don't pay more than $450 for this if you're interested in getting one. If you're primarily a console gamer and don't have a modern PC, the Ser4 can be a great way to dip your toes into the PC water and see what things are like. It won't give you the performance of a dedicated desktop with a discrete GPU, but you'll be able to do a whole lot of things with this small, relatively powerful computer. This is just an awesome little computer as long as you don't overpay for it. So after seeing all this, what do you think about mini PCs like the Ser4? Do you have your own mini PC right now? Is there any particular mini PC that you would recommend to people? Share your experience with everyone in the comments. That'll do it for this video, my modern and retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it online somewhere. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of my videos. If you're so inclined, you can support the work I do here on Patreon or Ko-fi, with links at the end of the video and down in the description. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.